Coming up in our newscast tonight, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visits China one more time, reportedly at the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping. During the 4-day visit, Kim is expected to hold talks with Xi, and denuclearization issues are among expected discussion topics. President Moon Jae-in names a new chief of staff. The South Korean leader also replaces his top secretaries for political affairs and public relations. Seoul keeps its current account surplus streak alive in November, but the size of the surplus slides to its lowest level since last April. Slower export growth is seen as the key factor after WTO forecasts a slowdown in global trade expansion. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is in China for another summit with President Xi Jinping. The state media of Beijing and Pyongyang confirmed the news and reported that Xi invited his North Korean counterpart. Oh Jung-hee starts us off with Kim's fourth visit to China.
For his first trip abroad in 2019, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un chose to visit China for the fourth time and strengthen ties with Beijing. A special train carrying Kim Jong-un and his wife Lee Seol-ju, plus a few other key officials from the regime, arrived in Beijing on Tuesday morning. According to North Korean and Chinese media, Chinese President Xi Jinping invited Kim Jong-un for the 4-day visit. Kim was accompanied by several top aides, including Kim Yong-chol, the official in charge of negotiations with the U.S. State Department, and a couple of key foreign affairs officials like Lee Soo-yong and Lee Yong-ho, as well as those in charge of the economy and the military. Kim Jong-un will be having his fourth summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping in less than a year. As Washington has been creating the atmosphere for another summit with North Korea, it's highly likely that Kim and Xi will share opinions on the denuclearization talks. Involving China in the signing of the peace treaty could be another talking point, as Kim Jong-un, through his New Year's address, called for multilateral negotiations to end the decades-long war. Watchers also believe Kim could tour around some industrial facilities in China in view of his focus on economic development. During his visit to China in March last year, Kim visited an exhibition on China's scientific innovations, and in June, he went to the nation's agricultural technology park. Meanwhile, in a change from the past, Pyongyang state media revealed the news about Kim's China visit while he was still on his way to Beijing. In the case of the past 3 visits, the agency reported the news on the last day of the visit or after the visit. It's seen that North Korea is trying to portray itself as a normal state, following suit with other countries' summit diplomacy. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
The nation's top office commented on the North Korean leader's trip to China, expressing hopes the occasion will contribute to the complete denuclearization of the peninsula and lead to the establishment of lasting peace in the region.
We hope the exchanges between the two Koreas, between Pyongyang and Beijing, and between Pyongyang and Washington will create a virtuous circle so that progress in each of these exchanges will lead to progress in the others. In particular, we hope that Chairman Kim Jong-un's fourth visit to China will serve as a stepping stone to a second North Korea-U.S. summit.
The Cheongwade spokesperson added Seoul has been in close contact with both North Korea and China regarding Kim's visit to Beijing, but did not specify exactly when the South Korean government was notified of the trip. When asked whether the two Koreas are currently pursuing any exchanges of special envoys or high-level talks, the presidential official replied, "Currently, there are no such plans." With Kim Jong-un's New Year's speech and President Donald Trump's comments on the possible venue of their second summit, there's been growing expectations lately of the event happening soon. The North Korean leader's fourth visit to Beijing further fuels the speculation. Our Lee Ji-won shares with us an expert's take on the matter.
China is often seen as North Korea's big brother, and the regime's leader Kim Jong-un has been visiting Beijing at crucial times. Kim's 3 visits with Chinese President Xi Jinping last year came once before his first summit with South Korean President Moon Jae-in, once before his June summit in Singapore with U.S. President Donald Trump, and once right after that Singapore summit. Thus, watchers are saying that the second Pyongyang-Washington summit, expected to be held in January or February, could really be imminent. A senior South Korean official at the Foreign Ministry told reporters on Tuesday that it is natural to think like this if comparing the visit to previous cases. The reason for the visit? Park Won-gun, Dean of International Affairs at Handong Global University, says Kim Jong-un may have visited China to discuss his strategy for negotiations with the U.S. and possibly get reassurances of Beijing support should the talks not go well. At the same time, the expert said the visit could be a means to pressure the U.S.
Kim, in his New Year's speech last week, said that the North may come up with new measures if the U.S. does not take corresponding measures. These new measures were not elaborated, but it could mean the North will side with China and engage in economic cooperation, regardless of its talks with Washington.
While Kim's visit may put some symbolic pressure on the U.S., Park does not think it'll have a negative impact on Pyongyang's talks with Washington.
Beijing's advice this time will be very much different from the advice before the first summit last year, where China allegedly pushed North Korea for a harder stance on its talks with the U.S. So whenever talks didn't go well, President Trump blamed China for Kim's change in attitude. So with the current hard-earned truce in their trade war with Washington, Beijing is not likely to risk it. I think it will in fact urge North Korea to take a bolder denuclearization step.
The experts said the North's likely cards it could put on the table are inspections and verifications of the dismantlement of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site and the Dongchang-ri missile test site. But Park added that more signs, including high-level or working-level talks, will be needed to confidently say that a Kim-Trump summit is imminent. He said as much as the Singapore joint declaration was not deemed a success in the U.S., the Trump administration will want solid denuclearization measures promised before holding the summit. 이지원, Arirang News.
Washington is reportedly searching for a potential location to hold the second summit with North Korea. On Tuesday, CNN, citing a source familiar with the planning process, said that Bangkok, Hanoi, and Hawaii have been visited by the White House scouting team. The source added America has not yet decided on either the list or a top pick, nor have there been any meetings between the two sides regarding a summit venue. Picking a date and place will require working-level discussions, but getting both parties on the table proved to be a challenge, considering how the meeting scheduled in New York last year was suddenly canceled. The nation's top office carries out a minor reshuffle. 3 new secretaries, including the presidential chief of staff, are replaced. Shin Se-min has updates on the move to try and provide a boost in running state affairs as the Moon administration enters the second part of their term in Cheongwade.
A partial reshuffle at the top office. President Moon Jae-in introduced new members to the presidential office with the hope of achieving his administration's goals as he enters the second half of his term. South Korea's ambassador to China, Yong Kim, becomes the presidential chief of staff, the second highest-ranking official at the top office after the president. A former 3-term lawmaker, Do is a close associate of the president and oversaw the president's election campaign headquarters in 2017. For the president's top secretary for political affairs, Kang Gi-jung, also a former 3-term lawmaker who served in parliament when Do was there. And taking the job of senior secretary for public relations is Yoon Do-han, a veteran reporter with more than 3 decades of experience at local broadcaster MBC, having been a correspondent in Los Angeles and an editorialist. The newly named presidential aides, who don't need confirmation hearings, will start work Wednesday. The new presidential staff will give the president a sturdier support base, since the newly appointed chief of staff and political secretary are known to be close to the president. It's part of the president's plan to achieve tangible outcomes from his policy agenda by tightening the grip of his crew on state affairs. It's also seen as a move aimed at revitalizing momentum for an administration with approval ratings at their lowest level yet. The administration is also dealing with accusations that it illegally spied on civilians and has seen economic numbers falter, both slowing down the president's legislative agenda. Through the minor yet high-profile shakeup at the top office, the presidential office is hoping to get some traction as it nears the start of the third year. And there's more to come. The presidential office is expected to go ahead with the cabinet reshuffle in the weeks to come to reform the face of the administration. HeungMins, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in chaired his first cabinet meeting of the year. He stressed each ministry must make a united effort to achieve tangible results.
특히 강조할 점은 그 성과는 보고서상의 성과가 아니라 국민들이 경제 활동 속에서 그리고 일상의 삶 속에서 체감하고 고개를 끄덕일 수 있는 성과가 되어야 합니다.
Asserting the direction of economic reform has been set, the South Korean leader insisted his second economic team must focus on how to move in that direction. Moon also noted the country is transitioning to a well-off, innovative and inclusive nation, while also entering an era of peace on the Korean peninsula. The president called for better communication and public relations from each ministry to ensure the public can accept the policies and warned against the distribution of fake news. Last November, South Korea's current account recorded a surplus for the 81st month in a row, but closer look reveals the size of the surplus tumbled to a 7-month low due to slower export growth. Here's Ko Rin-hee with a breakdown of the digits.
South Korea's current account, which records a nation's transactions with the rest of the world, including its trade in goods and services, has now recorded a surplus each and every month for almost 7 years. However, data from last November showed the size of the surplus slid to its lowest level since April 2018. According to the Bank of Korea, the current account posted a surplus of almost $5.1 billion in November, down from $7.4 billion a year earlier. The central bank attributed the lower numbers to a smaller surplus in the goods account, mainly due to slower export growth. The goods account had a surplus of around $8 billion, down from $11.5 in November 2017. Exports edged up a mere 0.5% on-year in November, mainly due to falling semiconductor prices. Analysts say there's lower demand because many data centers around the world have been postponing their purchases of semiconductors. These centers refer to centralized locations where computing and networking equipment is concentrated for storing or processing large amounts of data. Another reason is slowing growth in world trade volume. A World Trade Organization forecast in September said global trade growth for last year would fall to 3.9%, a slowdown from the 4.7% recorded in 2017. Analysts say the ongoing trade war between the U.S. and China is hurting global trade. An economic expert painted a grim picture for Korean exports this year.
In 2019, global economic growth is expected to slow down. This will lead to lower demand and negatively affect Korea's exports. In fact, Korea's export growth is expected to slow down this year.
The services account deficit fell to around $2.3 billion from a deficit of $3.3 billion a year earlier. This was due to an improvement in the travel account, as South Korea saw an uptick in number of visitors from China and Japan. Ko Rin-hee, Arirang News.
Today, Seoul's Prime Minister visited the port of Incheon to encourage the workers behind Korea's success as an exporter at the Sungwang New Port Container Terminal. He again thanked workers there for their contributions to making South Korea the world's 6th largest exporter, with outbound shipments surpassing $600 billion last year. In light of the new year, the PM went to Incheon to express the government's determination to reinvigorate the economy through exports and through stronger cooperation with Korea's trading partners, as well as through deregulation. He noted that while overall prospects might not be so bright for this year, exports to Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa are steadily on the rise. For 2018, the nation's shipbuilding industry ranked #1 in terms of annual orders, a title it reclaimed after 7 years. According to data compiled by global research firm Clarkson Research Institute, the shipbuilders clinched new orders last year totaling more than 12.6 million compensated gross tons, accounting for nearly 45% of all the orders placed in the world. Increase in orders for LNG carriers played a big role in helping Korea retake the top spot from China. Beijing is now runner-up at 32% of all orders, followed by Japan with a little over 12.5%. Samsung Electronics recorded lower than expected operating profits during the October to December period. The big picture provides a cause for celebrations, as for the entirety of 2018, the tech giant's sales hit an all-time high. Kim Ji-yeon helped us look beyond the numbers.
2018 for Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics can be summed up as bittersweet as it releases its provisional earnings report on Tuesday. Q4 earnings have dropped sharply, mainly due to sluggish demand in the memory chip business and growing competition in the smartphone sector. Operating profits in the fourth quarter tumbled 28.7% on year to around $9.7 billion, while Q4 sales dropped by nearly 10.6% to record $52.8 billion. That's much lower than predictions made by local analysts, which estimated Samsung Electronics would see $10.7 billion in Q4 operating profits and Q4 sales of $55.4 billion. Meanwhile, the company's sales and operating profits both hit a yearly all-time high in 2018 due to a semiconductor boom that lasted until the third quarter. The company's combined sales for 2018 surpassed $217.7 billion, and operating profits amounted to more than $53.6 billion. But the worst may be yet to come for Samsung, as analysts anticipate semiconductor prices to drop further this year as customers cut their orders.
The root cause of dwindling demand for semiconductors and smartphones comes from rising uncertainties in trade stemming from tit-for-tat tariffs from China and the U.S., on top of signs of a slowing global economy.
The expert says a dramatic uptick in earnings is unlikely as global chip manufacturers undergo inventory adjustment, while the general consensus among local market watchers is that Samsung may be able to rebound in the latter half of 2019 due to seasonal factors. The Korean smartphone maker has attempted to recover from the dismal fourth quarter figures by joining hands with U.S. tech giant Apple, a rare move considering they've been locked into years-long patent suits around the world. They've announced Sunday that Samsung Smart TVs will offer iTunes movie and TV show service from this spring. Both companies face challenges from Chinese competitors as they expand their presence in China and other emerging markets. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The number of local firms that changed the face value or par value of their stock decreased by 11.4% on year in 2018, which could be a sign they're not urgently looking for new investors. There were 44 companies that changed their face value in 2017, but last year that number was down to 39. Among them, tech giant Samsung Electronics, which lowered its face value from around $5 to 10 cents. The Korea Securities Depository announced among this group that 30 companies opted for a stock split to increase liquidity in stock transactions and attract more investors, while 9 increased their face value mainly to boost their corporate image. Seoul has released a video with subtitles in 6 languages to refute Japan's claims that one of its planes was locked on by a South Korean warship's targeting radar. The clip, already released by the Defense Ministry in Korean and English, clarifies Seoul's position that its Navy did not intend to threaten the Japanese patrol aircraft and didn't use radar on it. The video also urges Tokyo to stop politicizing the issue, and it also asked the Japanese government to answer why, in international waters, the aircraft was conducting a low-altitude flight in a menacing way to disrupt the warship's humanitarian efforts. According to a military source, the two countries agreed on the need to hold consultations and are currently setting up working-level talks on the issue. Meanwhile, Japan-based NHK reports its defense ministry plans to examine releasing its radar frequencies, which Japan had previously said were confidential. The head of World Bank is stepping down from his post in February. On specific reasons for the decision, Yong Kim, the first Asian American to lead the international body, had no comments. Choi Si-young has the full story.
At Monday's board meeting, World Bank President Yong Kim announced suddenly that he is resigning, despite having 3 years left in his term. In his resignation statement, the Korean-American didn't elaborate on the reason for his departure, but said it was a great honor to serve as president for the mission of, quote, ending extreme poverty in our lifetime. The bank said in a statement that Kim will, quote, join an as-yet-named firm focusing on increasing infrastructure investments in developing countries. The former medical doctor will also return to the board of Partners in Health, a nonprofit group he co-founded. Under Kim's leadership, the bank set the goal of eliminating extreme poverty by 2030 and increase financing for developing countries. He also secured the Trump administration support for a $13 billion capital hike to beef up the bank's lending capacity. But he did accede to U.S. requests that the bank curb loans to higher-income countries such as China. Regarding Kim's sudden departure, the BBC pointed to disharmony between Trump and Kim on climate change issues. Trump has promised to revive the ailing U.S. coal industry, but the bank under Kim ended its support for coal power projects. The Guardian and Reuters, however, share a different view, saying that it was Kim's own decision and Trump administration didn't push him. World Bank CEO Kristalina Georgieva will take the reins as interim chief before President Trump selects Kim's successor. Jo Seong, Arirang News.
Turning to the world of sports now, soccer, namely Tottenham Hotspur forward HeungMins' transfer value now exceeds $100 million. According to the International Center for Sports Studies report on the top transfer values for Big Five league players, the South Korean superstar's transfer value reached $107 million and is ranked 33rd out of the players in Europe's 5 biggest football leagues. Every January, the center calculates the transfer value of the players in the top 5 European leagues using factors like on-field performance, age, position, and contract period. Son has been making steady progress after entering the Premier League in 2015. He is the only Asian player in the 100 players on the list. Topping the list is French striker Kylian Mbappe. BTS made a big splash in the global music scene in 2018, breaking records and holding sold-out concerts one after another. Their merchandise have been flying off the shelves. And according to our Seoul and Young, fans are counting the hours until the next big items, BTS dolls, are released.
Fans of K-pop mega band BTS will be able to see their idols in doll form starting this summer. American toymaker Mattel, who also manufactured Barbie doll, made the announcement at the Hong Kong Toys and Games Fair on January 6th. It's part of a comprehensive worldwide licensing agreement with the band label Beacon Entertainment, under which Mattel would create dolls, collectible figures, games, and other merchandise. The dolls will be based on BTS Idol music video, which reached more than 300 million YouTube views. After the news, Mattel's Twitter account saw 25,000 new followers and the company's shares jumped almost 8% on Monday, the day after the partnership with the K-pop sensations was announced. 서은경, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, the cold wind is expected to sweep off the nation through the night.
That's right, Daniel. Now, this cold wind is going to make us shiver as the temperatures are expected to drop about 4 to 6 degrees Celsius lower than today. And currently, the wind is blowing 6 meters per second in Seoul, making people feel much colder than the actual readings until tomorrow morning. Thankfully, the wind is expected to keep away the dust for tomorrow and into the night, though the southern regions and Jeju Island can expect some snow. Meanwhile, Tokyo will be under chilly conditions similar to Busan. Now, in the morning, the cold spell will dominate the forecast, with Seoul waking up to minus 10 degrees Celsius and minus 7 degrees in Daegu and Gyeongju. And the daily highs in Seoul remains freezing cold, while a lot of regions will be higher, Busan reaching 8 degrees and Jeju at 6 degrees. There will be light precipitation over on Jeju Island and the eastern areas of Gangwon province later this week. But other than that, the weather will keep dry and crisp until next Monday. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
These are the stories we're following at this hour. Thanks for staying with us. Here's wishing you a good day or good night, depending on your time zone.